What happened when the Silver Surfer got a symbiote? What is the Void Knight, and how did this become one of Knull's most formidable right-hand men? And how did a rivalry with the Silver Surfer end? Over years, Knull has grown into a master craftsman, able to forge pockets of universal darkness into some of the most powerful living weapons in the universe. For eons, these weapons have been formidable forces of nature, weapons that have evolved in their own right, outgrown their master, and chosen lives for themselves. Eventually, these weapons grew into the symbiotes that we know and love from the lore, including Venom, Carnage, Toxin, and so many others. Today though, we wanted to talk about one symbiote in particular, one who had the earliest prototypes that Knull personally called and deemed one of his all-time favorite creations. So today, watchers of the Marvel Multiverse, let's talk about the proto-symbiote that corroded the Silver Surfer and turned the Herald of Galactus into an unquestioning minion of Knull the God. For this, we have to start by understanding the living abyss, which is the matter present in between ages of the universe. As we've mentioned before, Knull is from the space between death of the 6th cosmos and the dawn of the 7th. This is when we talk about the age between the 6th and the 7th cosmos and what we were referring to. We tend to represent it as a void of eternal darkness that Knull has inhabited, but this isn't quite the full story. While it is true that the space between universes is an untethered nothingness that stretches into eternity, there is still a physically tangible substance with which Knull was able to craft an entire empire of unending darkness, and this substance is known as the living abyss. The living abyss is the inky black tendrils of anti-life that exist without any intervention. This is what Knull used as an ore for the symbiotes, and this is the core material with which all symbiotes are crafted. This is a cosmic force that emerged specifically to oppose the light, and those who interact with the living abyss are prone to immediate corrosion if they are not strong enough to survive the process. It is described as being cold to the touch, smelling of noxious fumes, and embodying everything about spaces where life cannot exist. This is important because this is the core element of the symbiote creation, the mineral, if you will, that's channeling into Knull's forge in order to create things like the Necrosword and the living weapon, the symbiotes. The Void Knight was one of the first proto-symbiotes crafted from this living abyss where Knull figured out how to properly refine it into symbiotes that we know and love today. And because of this, its propensity for corruption and corrosion, as well as destruction, was much stronger than most modern symbiotes are. What's interesting, however, is that in the One King of Darkness, the Void Knight is listed separately from the rest of the symbiotes, so whether or not it's strictly classified officially as a symbiote or not is more ambiguous, but proto-symbiote seems accurate. Since we refer to the Necrosword as the first symbiote, however, and the Void Knight is an evolution of the same process, made from the same materials in the same way, we're going to refer to it as a symbiote, even if it's not as refined as the others are. Modern symbiotes have evolved and are now much more distinct and recognizable when compared to something like the Necrosword, but we will leave this up to you. We will just be referring to them as a proto-symbiote for the ease of reference for the remainder of the video. The Living Abyss, however, is not a symbiote, it's a crafting component. It has been stated that the Living Abyss in its raw form can overpower the most strong gods, and can feed off of their power to make itself stronger. It bonds like modern symbiotes do, but only to galactic level entities that can survive coming into contact with it. Normal symbiotes have trouble with stronger entities like cosmic figures, but if the Living Abyss ever comes into contact with a mortal, it will not bond with them. It will kill them outright, as the two are incompatible. But this is how the Void Knight was able to bond freely with an entity as powerful as the Silver Surfer. At this point in the story, the Silver Surfer had been sent backwards in time, and was actively trying to find a way to return to his present day. While trapped in the past, however, he came into contact with a world that was under Knull's control, and even though he was no longer a Herald of Galactus, he was still imbued with the power cosmic. With the power cosmic, he was able to free this planet from Knull's influence, calling the attention of Knull directly, who was not happy with the Surfer. The two clashed, and it was immediately apparent that the two were evenly matched, with Knull shockingly keeping pace with the power cosmic. When it saw the opportunity, however, Knull forcefully bonded the Silver Surfer and the Void Knight proto-symbiote, and became a soldier of the symbiote hive, finally taking control of the Surfer. The Surfer was overrun by the inky black darkness of the Void Knight, and he was compelled to follow the whims of the God of Darkness. Much like earthly symbiotes, the Void Knight was able to take the Silver Surfer's strongest attributes and magnify their power, turning the Surfer into Knull's perfect soldier. The Surfer's connection to the power cosmic was twisted, and rather than being channeled from what it was, the power cosmic was used as a fuel source for the Void Knight. This meant that the Surfer was still just as powerful, if not more so, only now he channels the power of the living abyss as a harbinger of darkness. He accompanied Knull on many of his quests, and it's important to note that the Surfer wasn't just displaced for a few years, but he was taken into a black hole and transported billions of years back into the dawn of the universe itself. This is when the Celestials were putting the finishing touches on the 7th cosmos, where Ego, the living planet, was still in his youth, and Knull's kingdom was the predominant empire in this corner of the burgeoning universe. He was only just beginning to lose his grip against the forces of light, so the Surfer was enslaved by an emperor of this eon. His army of symbiote dragons and his Void Knight led the armies of darkness against the Celestials until one fateful day. One day when they came across Ego, the living planet, who was able to understand exactly what had been occurring. Ego was able to separate the Surfer from the Void Knight and set the Surfer free, but this was not the end of Knull's rivalry with the Surfer. Knull was able to defeat the Silver Surfer for a reason, and this is because Knull was stronger, and when the Surfer was freed, Knull reminded him exactly how he was able to beat him the last time. Their rematch did not go much better, and Knull had the Surfer on the ropes until the Surfer came up with one final play. Not wanting to be enslaved by Knull and his power again, weakened, and on the verge of a second defeat, the Surfer summoned everything he had left from the power cosmic, and he put all of his remaining energy into a creation of light. He forged a star in the middle of their fight, and this was enough to get Knull to back away long enough for the Surfer to escape. The power of the star, however, was nothing more than a minor inconvenience for Knull, and even though he was winded, he was able to gather himself, and would return to his conquest of the universe. By this point, however, the Surfer was now free, and eventually returned to his proper time, but that doesn't change the fact that one of the most powerful versions of the Silver Surfer was one that did not have any control. He could lay waste to entire worlds under Knull's command. It could be incredibly difficult for him to reach this level of strength ever again without Knull. The Void Knight was truly something special. In exchange, however, he had absolutely no control over himself. When we talk about modern symbiotes, most of the time the host has at least some level of free will or influence. They can make their own decisions, and the symbiotes just have to whisper their darkest desires into the ear of the host. Over time, this leads to the host oftentimes becoming more aggressive or short-sighted, but the symbiote usually doesn't completely puppeteer a host. There have been occasions where a host is asleep and the symbiote is piloting a body, but when the host awakes, they usually get at least some level of control. The Void Knight, however, is a parasite. The Surfer had no control, no autonomy, and no say in what his power was being used for. This isn't something that the Surfer was coaxed into or manipulated into doing. He was utterly controlled. All of this is to show the process of crafting the symbiotes got more tame as time went on. First off, more modern symbiotes can bond with humans without immediately killing them. They can also allow the host to retain some level of control, and in some cases, the two can work together as a unit. If a host and a symbiote learn how to work together as a unit, then they pair the best traits of each entity, and this can create a strong team. But it wasn't always this way. Knull's first symbiotes were deadly and unrelenting. They could pilot the most powerful entities in the galaxy on command, and Knull's first creations crippled gods on the regular. In Venom 3, we're likely going to see a myriad of different kinds of symbiotes from different eras, but we must understand where they come from, and why Knull is still considered to be the god of the symbiotes even after all these years. But anyway, friends, what do you think of the Void Knight and Knull's earliest works and conquests? Is this one of the most powerful symbiotes ever created? And would you like to see a live-action depiction of the Void Knight or the Living Abyss? As always, my friends, Hulk smash that subscribe button for more Marvel lore and content, and have an amazing day.